My lords, ladies, and gentlemen, it is with the deepest regret that I share news of the passing of my beloved mother, the Queen. The announcement arrived without ceremony. There was no royal procession, no official address from the palace. Instead, a perfectly crafted message emerged at a precise moment, and it rocked the monarchy to its core. What stunned insiders even more was who delivered it. Not King Charles, not Buckingham Palace's press office. It came directly from Prince William and Princess Catherine. And make no mistake, this wasn't merely an announcement. It was bold, calculated, and, depending on whom you ask, pointed straight at Queen Camilla. In a royal family that survives on image, this public maneuver was anything but subtle. The veneer of unity between the House of Wales and the King and Queen has been cracking for years. Watchful eyes have seen the signs. Frosty looks across banquet tables, carefully worded compliments that cut like blades, and Catherine's conspicuous absence from major royal events. But this was an entirely different kind of message. A shot across the bow. A declaration. One that seems to challenge not only Camilla's ballooning role, but also her true position within the monarchy. So what did William and Catherine declare? Why choose this moment? And how did Camilla react when she realized this wasn't coincidence? It was strategy. Because behind that 60-second proclamation lies a far deeper story. Years of resentment, shifting alliances, and a battle for the future of the crown. Now that the dust is beginning to settle, one thing is impossible to deny. The next king and queen are done staying silent. The royal feud is no longer rumor. It's real. And it just burst into full public view. The monarchy has always projected a carefully curated portrait of closeness and stability. But within palace walls, cracks have been spreading for years, and now they can no longer be covered up. At the center of this turbulence is a widening divide reflected in public decisions, evolving power dynamics, and, most recently, an extraordinary statement that could alter the monarchy itself. The so-called harmony between King Charles, Queen Camilla, and the Prince and Princess of Wales has always been fragile. Few realize just how fragile. While Charles and Camilla have tried to reintroduce the crown with a softer, more contemporary tone, William and Catherine have quietly built extraordinary public favor. Their popularity, especially among younger generations, far exceeds that of the King and Queen. And though the palace denies it, that popularity has carried consequences. Behind closed doors, it has driven a quiet, long-brewing clash of agendas. Camilla's elevation to queen was never uncontested. She spent decades repairing her image after being branded the interloper. But her rising influence has triggered unease within the institution, especially among those still loyal to Princess Diana's legacy. For William and Catherine, that legacy isn't just sentimental, it's strategic. Every engagement, photograph, and carefully delivered line has framed them not only as future monarchs, but as heirs to Diana's vision. A crown that listens, cares, and evolves. But what happens when that vision clashes with the woman now seated beside the king? But before we continue, we'd love for you to hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying this video. If you just did, we truly appreciate it. Now, let's get back to the main content. Insiders whisper of subtle moves meant to shrink Catherine's spotlight. Charities once promised shifted elsewhere. Camilla's engagements dominating press coverage. Most notably, an ongoing effort to paint Camilla as the senior royal woman in the family. It was an image Catherine never publicly challenged, but one the public certainly noticed. Now that William has begun leaning more forcefully into his responsibilities as heir, what were once quiet tensions have evolved into calculated moves. The statement in question didn't originate from the king's office, nor did it carry the queen's approval. It came straight from William and Catherine themselves. A highly intentional break with protocol in a system where every gesture is choreographed. On the surface, their message seemed harmless. Behind palace walls, it was interpreted as something far more daring, a declaration that the Prince and Princess of Wales no longer intend to live in Queen Camilla's shadow. For years, Catherine was viewed as the picture of elegance, poised, polished, a flawless royal standing serenely under pressure. But behind the perfect posture was a woman walking a tightrope inside an institution known for suppressing emotion. Her role wasn't just to uphold tradition, it was to protect Diana's legacy as well. And yet, insiders claim she was increasingly treated like a guest in her own home. The whispers began long ago. Subtle but pointed efforts were being made to trim her influence. Publicly, she was celebrated. Privately, her role was repeatedly downplayed. Camilla's engagements frequently overlapped or overtook events that were initially arranged around Catherine's patronages. Positive internal reports on her campaigns were quietly buried. Camilla's advisors worked behind the scenes to shift attention elsewhere. While rarely blatant, the pattern became too consistent to ignore. Catherine understood her path to prominence didn't come from scandal. She had earned every inch through restraint, consistency, and compassion, qualities the public adored. But those same qualities made her a threat inside a hierarchy obsessed with control. She endured personal slights that cut deep, being excluded from key planning discussions, decisions made about her children without consultation, even wardrobe scrutiny designed to ensure she never stole the Queen's spotlight. Still, she said nothing, knowing a single misstep could be used against her not only by the press, but by people inside the palace who wanted her influence contained. So she waited. She smiled even when it stung. She accepted sidelines that she knew she didn't deserve. But over time, her patience hardened not into bitterness, but into strategy. She would not compete with Camilla through drama. She would compete through position, through quiet power. William, ever the observer of palace undercurrents, had finally seen enough. It was time to act. True to their style, there were no screaming matches, no theatrical scenes behind sealed doors. Their method has always been deliberate, controlled, and devastatingly effective when needed. When they chose to reclaim their narrative, it wasn't through anger, but through a deliberate decision made privately, far from palace ears and curious staff. Nothing about it was impulsive. This was the result of months, perhaps years, of watching the monarchy's balance of influence shift. William had witnessed his wife slowly marginalized, watching Camilla insert herself into choices involving their children, their responsibilities, and even matters touching on future succession. Perhaps what stung most was not Camilla's growing influence, but King Charles's unwillingness, or inability, to step in. This wasn't just a matter of hurt feelings or behind-the-scenes tension. It was about the future of the institution itself. The vision that William and Catherine shared, one rooted in transparency, empathy, and progress, was slowly being eroded by the very system that should have upheld it. In that private, tightly guarded conversation, they decided they wouldn't wait any longer. They would take action, and they wouldn't ask permission. Their plan wasn't just bold, it was meticulously crafted. Every phrase in the statement was chosen with care. Every sentence was deliberate. Outwardly, it would look like a new royal initiative, a forward-looking gesture, a unifying step. But woven into its polished presentation was a message that couldn't be mistaken. William and Catherine were making their presence known, and they were doing it their way. Palace insiders later admitted that even senior staff were left out of the loop until the very last minute. There were no leaks, no opportunities to block or rework the release. Not even the king was given advance notice. That alone sparked anger behind palace walls, but it also ensured that the message would arrive untouched and uncompromised. This wasn't rebellion, it was redirection. With a flawlessly executed announcement, the Prince and Princess of Wales didn't just regain control of the narrative, they shifted the center of gravity inside the royal family. The days of passive compliance were behind them. A new chapter was beginning, one that wouldn't exist under Camilla's shadow. The public's reaction was immediate. The statement was short, a few paragraphs, published via Kensington Palace's official channels and paired with a sharp, poised photo of William and Catherine. But it wasn't the image that caught attention. It was the language. To casual readers, it appeared to introduce a new program, expanding Catherine's long-standing advocacy for mental health and early childhood development. But to those watching closely, the message was unmistakable. One phrase in particular stood out. Catherine was referred to as the future queen of the people, a term never before used, not for Diana, not for anyone. While some saw it as a graceful nod to public sentiment, royal watchers understood its deeper significance. It was a quiet but pointed reclaiming of a title the public had long associated with Diana, and now, by right of succession and public affection, with Catherine. There was more. The program launched without collaboration from the King's Foundation and without any role from Camilla's team. Standard royal coordination between households had been bypassed entirely. Even the invite list for the launch event was revealing. A carefully curated mix of influential figures, but conspicuously absent were any of Camilla's usual partners or allies. This wasn't just another charity initiative, it was a calculated move of royal independence. Support flooded in. Catherine was praised widely, especially across social media and international press. Headlines began to circulate. Catherine steps out of the shadows. A quiet royal revolution begins. And the one that caught the most attention, where was Queen Camilla? Inside the palace, the mood was anything but celebratory. Aides scrambled to craft a response that would neither validate nor confront what had just happened. Reports suggested Charles's private office was completely blindsided. As for Camilla, the message hit hard. This wasn't about public relations anymore. It was about power. For the first time, William and Catherine weren't simply participating in the monarchy, they were leading it. The statement didn't name names, but the intent was crystal clear. The future of the crown was being redefined, and it wasn't looking back. Camilla's response came quickly, but behind closed doors. No public remarks, no interviews, and no dramatic reactions. But inside royal circles it was clear. The balance of power had shifted. Those closest to the throne understood that the silence was misleading. Behind the grand doors of Clarence House, anger simmered, not only at the announcement itself, but at what it symbolized. A stunning, calculated removal of influence rather than title. For years, Camilla had worked her way out of public scorn, reshaping herself into an essential partner to the king. She weathered backlash, shifted her public role, and finally cemented her place in the spotlight. But in one quietly brilliant move, Catherine had redirected attention away from her, without uttering a single word. Worse still, it hadn't happened in isolation. William had helped orchestrate it. They had cut straight through the palace ranks with the kind of precision only insiders could pull off. The mood inside the royal household turned icy. Lifelong supporters suddenly found themselves uncertain of where they stood in this emerging Cold War. Camilla, whose influence had steadily expanded since Charles took the throne, was, for the moment, unable to steer the public narrative. The question wasn't why Catherine was acting independently. Instead, the public applauded her for doing so. The maneuver hit exactly where it was meant to, with the people. Charles, meanwhile, was caught in the crossfire, between his wife and his heir, and between the legacy of the past and the reality of the future. He knew how fragile Camilla's public standing was, and how carefully he'd worked to preserve it. Now he was confronted with an even harsher truth. William was no longer just waiting in the wings. He was setting the pace for the next era, with Catherine now seen by many as the true queen-in-waiting, in every way but name. No matter what Charles chose, the balance of power had already shifted. Camilla, once untouchable in her sphere, suddenly found herself boxed in by the very couple she had long tried to keep at arm's length. In a household ruled by subtlety and tradition, the boldest moves are nearly always made quietly. And William and Catherine's announcement wasn't simply a message, it was a claim of ownership. Their strategy over the years had been the same: watch, withstand, adapt. Now it was clear they were done waiting for someone else to shape their destiny. To the public, it was simply a well-crafted statement paired with a polished campaign. Inside the walls of power, it hit like lightning. It signaled a shift in posture and a warning. Diana's son would confront the system when necessary, and Catherine, long underestimated, now possessed a type of influence no one could casually dismiss. For Camilla, the threat wasn't immediate exile. It was something worse: slow irrelevance. As the monarchy evolves under its next custodians, her role may increasingly be defined by what she can't control rather than what she can. King Charles now faces the defining challenge of his reign. William and Catherine are reformers, not revolutionaries, and their strike was deliberate and devastating. If the king fails to recognize the momentum building behind them, and what Catherine's surge in public favor truly represents, he risks being left behind by the very future he hopes to secure. That, perhaps, is the entire point. The monarchy is no longer held together by tradition alone. It is being renewed by those who best understand the people it serves. William and Catherine are not waiting any longer. They're leading. The only question is, what happens next? Will Camilla strike back behind the scenes? Will Charles try to pull his son and daughter-in-law back in line? Or has the next royal chapter already begun, one in which silence offers no protection and tradition no longer outweighs reality? One thing is clear: the crown will never be the same. If you believe Catherine deserves recognition for standing her ground, tap the like button. And if you want to see a monarchy shaped by Diana's legacy, subscribe now and be part of the movement. What's your take? Was this a subtle power play or the beginning of Queen Camilla's downfall?